You went in for a lamp. It's 4 hours later. You're sitting in a canteen eating meatballs you didn't plan to eat, next to a trolley holding a plant, a mirror, 3 storage boxes, and a bag of 100 tea lights. Somewhere in that trolley, probably, is the lamp. And here's the strange part. You weren't tricked. Nobody pressured you. Nobody lied to you. The prices were exactly what the labels said. You walked in, you walked around, and you came out with 11 things you didn't come for. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because the building you just walked through was designed, carefully, deliberately, by people who study exactly this, to keep you inside it as long as possible. Because inside that store, time is money, yours. Start with the thing you noticed and forgot. You couldn't choose your own route. Almost every shop gives you a grid. Aisles, cross aisles, a door at each end. You go to what you need, you leave. Here there is one path. It bends, it loops, it turns back on itself. And it takes you through every department whether you want them or not. Arrows on the floor tell you which way. There is no, just the lamp store. Walk it end to end and you'll cover something close to a mile in a shop. To buy a lamp. That's not a design flaw in a furniture shop. That is the furniture shop. And the man whose ideas that layout is built on spent the end of his life apologizing for them. The company has a name for it internally. The long, natural way. Natural. As if wandering for an hour past bedrooms you don't need is the obvious way for a human being to buy a lamp. And once you understand that the path is the product, everything else on it starts to make sense. There are shortcuts, by the way. Marked doors that cut between sections, required by fire rules. They're not advertised, they're not on the arrows, and most shoppers walk past them for years without noticing. Nothing dishonest is happening. The shortcut is right there. It's just not the route that's been made obvious. And obvious is the entire battlefield, which raises the real question, what does the extra hour actually buy them? In the 1950s, an architect named Victor Gruen designed the first enclosed shopping mall in America. He wanted a town square, somewhere people would gather, meet, spend an afternoon in public. What retail took from his work was one specific effect, and it now carries his name whether he liked it or not. The Gruen transfer is the moment a shopper stops being a shopper and becomes a wanderer. You arrive with a task, one lamp, and somewhere in the layout the task dissolves. Your pace drops. Your eyes start drifting sideways instead of forward. You are, from that moment, browsing. Gruen spent his later years disowning what his malls became, but the effect he accidentally documented is now standard equipment, and a store built as a single winding path is the most efficient machine ever made for producing it. So the layout has one job: hold you. The question is what it holds you with, because a corridor alone won't do it. So watch what's placed along that path. Not shelves, rooms, fully built little apartments, with a bed made up, a book on the nightstand, a kettle on the counter, and a small sign giving the square meters, often a number smaller than the flat you actually live in. You are not being shown a wardrobe. You're being shown a life in which you are tidier, calmer, and better organized than you currently are, and the wardrobe is standing in it. That's why you slow down. Nobody browses a warehouse shelf for 4 minutes. Everybody looks at a room that seems to have their better life in it. And then, at a very specific point on that route, the whole mood of the building changes. You leave the showrooms and arrive somewhere louder and messier. Big open bins, stacked high, filled with the same small item jumbled together. Utensils, frames, candles, tea lights. That mess has a name in the trade. Bulla. A neat display says considered purchase. A big jumbled heap says cheap. Grab it. Don't think. Nothing in that bin costs enough to warrant a decision. That's the point. After an hour of weighing up 300-pound sofas, a 2-pound bag of tea lights doesn't register as spending at all. Your brain has been recalibrated by the price tags it just spent an hour reading. And the cheap bins are placed exactly where that recalibration is strongest. But price tricks only work on a shopper who's still walking. By now, you shouldn't be. By now, you've been walking for an hour, and something else is working on you. You're hungry, so there's a restaurant. In the middle of the store, not at the exit. Halfway round, right where a tired shopper might otherwise decide they've had enough and leave. The food is famously cheap. Meatballs, a hot dog for pocket change, coffee that costs almost nothing. The company has been fairly open about why. A hungry shopper leaves, a fed shopper keeps going. That's not a perk attached to the shop. It's a refueling station, placed at the exact point where the walk starts to break people. Fed and moving again, you reach the part of the store where the job quietly changes hands. Then comes the part that everyone accepts without ever asking why. At the end of the path is a warehouse. You take a paper slip with an aisle number, find your own item, pull a heavy flat box off a rack, load it onto a trolley yourself, wheel it to a till, load it into your own car, drive it home, carry it up your own stairs, and then spend an evening on your floor with an Allen key. Every one of those steps used to be someone's job. A picker, a packer, a delivery driver, an assembler. The flat pack didn't just make furniture cheaper to ship, it made you the last 4 employees. And here's where it stops being a story about saving money, because the work doesn't just reduce their costs, it changes how you feel about the thing. In 2011, 3 researchers, Michael Norton, Daniel Moshon, and Dan Ariely, published a paper in the Journal of Consumer Psychology with a title that says it outright: The IKEA Effect, When Labor Leads to Love. They ran the experiment the obvious way. One group built a plain storage box themselves. Another group was handed the identical box, already assembled. Then everyone was asked what they'd pay for it. The builders valued their own box far higher. In one study, they were willing to pay around 63% more than the people who got the finished one. Same box, same wood, same screws. The only difference was 20 minutes of their own effort, and it made the object worth more to them than the professionally built version. The researchers took it further. Break the thing down and have people rebuild it, and the effect holds. But stop them halfway through, before completion, and it collapses. It isn't effort alone that does it. It's finishing. Sit with what that means inside this specific building. The assembly is not an unfortunate cost. You pay for a lower price. It is the last stage of the sale, and it happens in your living room, after the money has already changed hands. You do the work. The work makes you love the shelf. Loving the shelf makes you a person who shops there, defends it at parties, and comes back for the matching one. And now the whole afternoon flips over. You've been thinking of that trip as shopping. You bought some things. It took longer than expected. The meatballs were nice. But look at what actually happened. You walked a mile on a route you didn't choose, at a pace they set. You ate at their canteen, at the moment they placed it. You picked your own stock from their warehouse, drove their delivery van for them, and then finished manufacturing their product on your own floor, and paid for the privilege of doing it. You didn't visit a store. You worked a shift. And the wage was paid in attachment. At the end of it, you valued a plain wooden shelf more than a stranger would, precisely because you were the one who built it. They're not in the furniture business. They're in the business of your afternoon, and the flat pack is just the part of the factory that fits in your car. And notice which number nobody prints on the receipt. The paper in your hand lists the shelf, the boxes, the tealights. It does not list 4 hours of a Saturday, a mile on foot, a car boot, a drive, 2 flights of stairs, and an evening on the floor with an Allen key. Put any hourly value on your own time, anything at all, and that unlisted column is often larger than the printed one. The shelf was cheap. The trip was not. That's not an argument against ever going. It's just the honest total, and it's the one figure the store has no reason to show you. Before you decide this is one Swedish company's peculiar genius, look around. Self-checkout. You scan, you bag, you handle the errors, and they call it convenience. The meal kit that ships you raw ingredients and a recipe, so you can cook the meal you paid someone to design. The build-your-own burger form. The profile you spend an hour customizing. The software you configure yourself instead of ringing support. Every one of them moved a job from their payroll to your evening. And every one of them gets the same bonus the researchers measured. You like the result more, because you did the work. The chair is just the version with a diagram and an Allen key, which leaves one useful question. Knowing all of it, how do you walk back in there? None of which means you have to stop going. The prices are real, the design is genuinely good, and a shelf you built yourself is still a shelf. But go in knowing what the building is for. Take the shortcut doors, they're marked, use them. Write the list before you leave the house, and buy from the list, because the trolley you fill on the way round is not a record of what you needed, it's a record of how long you stayed. Eat before you go, or eat after, so the restaurant is a restaurant and not a refueling stop in someone else's process. And when you're standing over a big jumbled bin of things that cost almost nothing, notice that it looks that way on purpose. The store isn't trying to sell you a lamp. It's trying to buy your afternoon at a very good rate. So 4 hours, a canteen tray, and a bag of 100 tea lights. Now you know why. Nothing went wrong in there. You didn't lose track of time. The time was the transaction, and every arrow on that floor was pointing you deeper into it. You went in for a lamp. You came out with a shelf you built yourself, and quietly love more than it deserves. That was the plan.